So good afternoon, everybody. And if you want to interrupt me, go ahead and interrupt me, or wait till to the end. That's both ways are okay. And I'm trying to move this forward. Oh, there it is. Okay. So what is an audit? So it's a systematic and independent examination of trial-related activities and documents to determine whether the evaluated trial-related activities were conducted, the data were recorded, analysed, and accurately reported according to the approved protocol, sponsors' SOPs, good clinical practice, and applicable regulatory requirements. It doesn't seem to be moving forward. Oh, there. Okay. So institutional audits performed by institution or department, units per institutional policy, routine, not audited otherwise, at least annually or more frequently, depending on the degree of risk, for cause. Institution Review Board, they do routine audits as well, and for cause. Thank you. Sponsor audits, sponsor monitoring visits, regular intervals throughout the study, assures the quality, accuracy of the data collected, safety and welfare of subjects are protected, compliance with the approved protocol, GCP, and applicable regulations. Sponsor QA audit routine, just after perhaps submission of product to FDA, purpose to prepare for an FDA inspection. National Clinical Trials Network, NCTN studies, they routinely do an audit every 2 to 3 years to assure data quality and accuracy. They can also do a for cause audit to follow up on a problem detected during a routine audit. FDA inspections, routine, those studies that are crucial to a product's evaluation and approval, the sites with the highest enrollment, retrospective inspections after a product has been submitted for marketing approval, or sponsor requests now over-the-counter status. So they want to assure also the integrity of scientific testing and the reliability of test data submitted to FDA to permit sound judgments regarding the safety and efficacy of regulated test articles, to assure the protection of human rights and the welfare of human research subjects. They can also do for cause because of a patient complaint or other suspicious activity when problems are identified during a routine inspection. What would make the FDA suspicious? Complaints from subjects, employees, or sponsor, enrollment of too many study subjects over a short period of time. This is a red flag. It's not to say that they've done anything wrong. It's just a red flag. Results too perfect. Attempts to delay an inspection. Attempts to limit access to documents. Investigator conducted the study without staff, just themselves. Similarities in signatures on consent forms. Whiteout or obliteration of data. Notes not in chronological order or squeeze between lines. Photocopied source documents. Perform initial internal or self-audits periodically during the study. Request a peer audit. Obtain a copy of applicable audit requirements to become familiar with what they are looking for. They have that on their website at that below link. Clinical sites will usually receive prior notification of impending inspection unless for cause. Inspector will usually schedule with site. Principal investigators should be available, usually a few days' notice, otherwise seen as stalling. PI not available, tell the inspector, leave it to them if they still want to do the audit. You weren't the study coordinator on the study. It doesn't matter, you are here now. Notify the IRB, pharmacy if study drug still is on site, even if it's not on site, they might want to still see pharmacy to see where the drug was stored. Sponsor industry sponsored trials, all study personnel, clinical staff if applicable, just to make sure that they know that there may be an inspector from the FDA come. NIH differences, auditor will contact the PI and study coordinator to arrange a mutually satisfactory time and place, normally at least 30 days advance notice. A select number of cases will be reviewed based upon a percentage. Cases will be randomly selected. NIH informs study team of cases 2 weeks prior to the audit. Flag medical records of selected cases are instructed. The FDA often does not inform study team of selected cases. So you need to, when you have an FDA audit, you need to go through all the subjects charts. Once the audit is scheduled, reserve a room with a large table and access to a copier. Ensure the auditor, inspectors will have privacy and quiet, not located near any patient or study information. Obtain remote access to EPIC for auditors. Auditors, inspectors will only audit from originals or certified copies. Ensure all source documents, regulatory documents, and case report forms are available and preferably in the room reserved. Clinical records, inpatient, outpatient charge per remote access for EPIC. I don't know if this is still true, but right before the pandemic, it was, I think, probably 2019, I went to a conference, it was like a 2-day conference on FDA inspections, and it was presented by actual FDA inspectors, and they said that they don't touch any, and I don't know if this still holds true, they don't touch any equipment that belongs to the hospital or belongs to the university or anything. So they do over the shoulder looking, like with EPIC, they would do over the shoulder. I'm not sure if that's still true because that was 2019, but they don't usually change the practices. Outside records, subject diaries, calendars, subject questionnaires. Research records as applicable, original signed consent forms for each subject, completed eligibility criteria checklist for each subject, subject tracking logs, SAEs reported for each subject, research chart, case report forms, completed data correction forms, queries. IRB documentation, they want to look at the initial approval, modifications, revised consent forms, annual continuing review, advertisements, all correspondence to IRB and from IRB, documentation of IRB review and acknowledgement of all anticipated problems, IRB committee membership list, all IRB approval letters should list items approved by name, number, version, date, etc. File all versions in chronological order, most recent on top as applicable. This is if you've got a paper, red binder, informed consent used at the site, protocol used at the site, investigated drug brochure or package insert, investigated device brochure or user manual, FDA form 1572, investigator agreement for device studies, which is equivalent to form 1572, lab certifications and normal ranges, CVs and licenses, drug receipt documentation, drug order forms, drug accountability records, drug dispensing records, records regarding disposal and investigation of drugs, If drugs still on site, have ordered to go to the pharmacy, and as I said a few minutes ago, they still might want to go to pharmacy just to see where it was stored. Review medical record, use a checklist, issue documentation to support each eligibility criteria. All data in data collection forms, case report forms are verifiable from source documents. Document reasons for any missed visits, document all efforts to contact subject for follow-up. If you find deficiencies, can they be addressed prior to the audit? And yes, late entries, real time with explanation, never backdate signatures. Always put today's date and the reason why it's a late entry, directly on consent form, notes to file, document the problems, number of occurrences, document the root cause if known, document how you will prevent the problem in the future if applicable, procedural change, staff re-education, protocol, consent form changes. Training occurred on the new procedure corrective action. Date new procedure was implemented. If applicable, steps to monitor the procedural change is working, and PI sign off. I mean, you need to go back and make sure it is working. If data is lost or missing, don't try to hide it. Auditors really like to see that problems were identified, addressed and resolved prior to the audits. Isn't there another one? No? Okay. Okay, so any questions regarding external audits? No? Okay. Danielle, do you want to take over from this? Oh, I thought I was missing some. So, sorry about that. So FDA inspection should present a badge credentials. If the inspector cannot produce above, do not allow them to proceed with the inspection. And this, they said this, they always carry their badge and credentials with them. So they should always have them, and they will present the PI with the form FDA 482, which is notice of inspection. Okay. Interactions with inspectors, do remember FDA inspectors and NIH auditors are representative of the federal government. And just to let you know, the FDA themselves don't call themselves inspectors, they call themselves investigators. Which I find strange. Limit conversation to study and auditors' questions. Stay on topic. Politely point out inaccuracies. Reference protocol, policy or procedure references when possible. Don't be defensive. Withhold information. Argue. Complain either about a sponsor, the PI, IRB. If you don't know the answer to a question, don't guess. Answer honestly, find out answer if possible. Make yourself available, but don't hover. Cannot offer refreshments or lunch, as it could be construed as bribing a federal agent. The FDA inspector reviews selected subjects from a list provided by the FDA central office, regulatory files, documentation of receipt, distribution, and return of test article, not subject to inspection, is contracts, budgets, studies not involved in the inspection, subjects, patients not involved in the study. The inspector is looking for protocol and consent form approved by IRB prior to first patient in study, annual continuing reviews, all amendments documented, dated with protocol, reported to the sponsor, reported to the IRB. Was the protocol followed? That's a big one. And the most common one when you deviate from the protocol. What was this? Did somebody have a question? No? What was the source of patients for the study in-house, outside advertisements approved by the IRB? Was the test article represented as safe and or effective for the post indication? Study subject records, all subjects signed and dated consent forms prior to treatment with the test article. Do the subjects exist? Were subjects available during the course of the study and compliant with the study visits? Did the subjects have the condition, disease being studied? Did the subjects meet the inclusion, exclusion criteria? And if not, was the exception approved by the sponsor? Subject records continued. Are the case report forms consistent with the source documents? Were the adverse reactions reported on the case report form and to the sponsor? And was the association with the test article documented? Were concomitant therapies reported on the case report forms? Were all withdrawals with reasons reported to the sponsor? Who recorded the information in the records and what records were maintained? Communication for the sponsor, were periodic reports submitted to the sponsor, and how and when were case report forms submitted? Test article accountability, was the test article administered and dispensed by qualified and authorized personnel? Is there documentation of receipt dates and quantity dispense and identity of subjects? Was the distribution of the test article limited to persons under the investigative supervision? Does the date, quantity, frequency, duration, and route of administration match the source documents? Date and quantity of final distribution of test article documented and accurate? Was the test article stored under appropriate conditions? Are blinding, identity, lot number, and package labeling consistent with each other and all study records? Who maintains custody of the study records? If not maintained by the investigator, has the sponsor been notified? Have study records been maintained per regulations? And are electronic data systems involved in gathering, storing, and transmitting data to the sponsor? So at the conclusion, the inspector conducts an exit interview with investigator, may have also study staff there. And when I went to this FDA conference in 2019, they actually turned around and said, it's a good idea to meet with you if they're going to be on site for more than a day. It's a good idea for the investigator and study staff to meet with them before they go home each evening, which surprised me actually. But if they are, they said it's recommended that the PI does meet with them. But if not, the exit interview, they'll go through their findings with the investigator. PI is presented with a form FDA 483 inspectional observations if deviations are noted from regulations. Investigators should not sign anything in the exit interview. Can request presence of general counsel. Know what copy, if any, the inspector takes with them, and remove PHI from any subjects or documents. Copy IRBs and sponsor, if industry sponsored, immediately on all inspection findings. Response to FDA Form 483 written response to a 483 may not be required, but may be warranted. However, it is recommended. Copy IRB and sponsor if industry sponsored on response. Sponsors should be allowed to review response before submitted to the FDA. Inspector then writes an establishment inspection report. That report is sent to the FDA central office for review and final disposition. The FDA issues a letter to the PI, and this usually takes a while after the inspection, with one of the following classifications. No action indicated, so no deviations were observed or very minor ones. No response necessary from the PI. Voluntary action indicated deviations occurred from the regulations, may or may not require a response. However, again, it is recommended. Official action indicated, called the warning letter. Serious deviations occurred from the regulations that require prompt corrective action. Inform IRB and the sponsor, if applicable, of all inspection outcomes promptly. The VAI or OAI coordinate response if applicable with the sponsor. Submit response to the IRB and the sponsor. And they usually require a response within 30 days of the notice. Notice of initiation, disqualification, proceedings, and opportunity to explain better when evidence of repeat or deliberate violation of regulations to determine if further action necessary. Written response necessary if investigator failed to respond or response unsatisfactory, and informal hearing is offered. Is offered to the investigator. Okay, can you put your, whoever that is, can you put yourself on mute?
Sarah, if you could please put yourself on mute. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. Next one. Disqualification from receiving investigational products or restricted if the investigator has repeatedly or deliberately failed to comply with regulations or has falsified data. Disqualified permanently, cannot receive investigational products for a specified period of time, cannot receive investigational products. Restricted, agreement with the FDA to conduct trials with certain restrictions. Debarment, and this is usually when somebody gets debarred, it usually is because of falsification. If investigator convicted of a felony under federal law for conduct relating to the development and approval of a drug application, the investigator cannot provide services in any capacity to a person with an approved or pending drug problem application to for the term specified, if not permanent. PI provided with inspection findings. NIH findings include acceptable needs follow-up, unacceptable. The inspection team conducts an exit interview with the investigator and research staff to go over preliminary findings and recommendations. A written report is sent to the PI, usually a month or 6 weeks after. Submit a copy of the report to the IRB. If any findings requires follow-up, a response from the PI must be sent within 30 days of receiving the inspection findings. If either component is deemed unacceptable, a re-inspection may be required, as well as a written response and or corrective action and prevention plan, often called a CAPA. If the PI response is considered adequate, NIH sends a final letter to the PI. Now, any questions? Oh.
Hi,
Okay.
Annette.
Okay.
Hello?
Hello?
Oh, hi, Annette. It's Rachel.
Oh, hi, Rachel.
I don't have a question, but I am going to post in the chat a link to the FDA website where they post the warning letters, which is
Oh, yeah. Oh, it's very, very interesting to read what investigators have done. And remember, when there's a warning letter, this is industry-sponsored trials that's been monitored periodically. So it's amazing what monitors haven't, when they come up, when they come or however they monitor, what were they monitoring? It's an eye opener to read some of these warning letters.
yes, I know, I agree. I posted it in the chat there if anybody wants to
lovely.
take a look.
It's really it's quite distressing really when you read some of these warning letters and what some investigators have done.
Mm-hmm.
And it stays there forever, by the way.
I know. I know.
It never goes away. Anything else from anybody? All right. Go for it, Danielle.
All right. Okay, so is someone going to add the slides or do I need to share?
Did you want to share the slides yourself or did you want me to put it on the screen and
If
go
you could
through
put it on the screen, that would be great.
All right, one moment.
I can do it too, though, either way. And I believe Erin is here, so if Erin wants to jump in and add anything at any time, just let me know.
Yes, I will, but I don't think I will have to, but I'm here.
Okay.
Do you see the slideshow?
Yes, I see it now. All right, hello everyone. So I am Danielle. I am relatively new to the Office of the Vice Chancellor of Research. I'm a clinical research compliance specialist, and I'm here with Erin, who's the director of our department. And we're going to go over the internal monitoring process at UIC. All right, so with the UIC Clinical and Human Subjects Research Compliance Monitoring and Audit Program, primary goal with this is education and to work sort of one-on-one with PIs to address any issues early on in the studies. The Compliance Monitoring and Audit Program is the internal process for proactive identification of potential compliance issues with emphasis on education and training. And we would like this to be a resource for investigators so that investigators, especially new investigators or anyone that only does investigator-initiated studies that may not have that other regulatory oversight, to learn more about best practice ideas for human subjects research and compliance with UIC policies, guidance, and federal regulations. And I can also put in the chat. So there's our landing page for the OVCR website is available. And in just a moment, I can also put that in the chat for anyone who would like to see that. And okay, so the selection process. So for, we generally do random selection, but there are some cases that there is a for-cause selection for internal monitoring. And this is if there have been any compliance or IRB hotline referrals the billing issues related to clinical care or any patterns of recurrent or continued noncompliance. They would refer that to us, and then we would do a directed or for-cause audit for those reasons. The routine or random selection, this is chosen for all active studies that are open for enrollment, or if any studies are closed to enrollment, but there are still subjects being treated. And we reach out to the study teams to check on that before moving forward with an audit. And so here's a list of some of the items for internal audits. So studies that relate to the topic of a corrective action plan, and any regulatory department that has issued a corrective action plan. So say there's a department that, you know, has had issues in the past, or anything like that that we may be made aware of. Any investigator initiated studies, as I mentioned earlier, significant risks, device studies that are phase 1 or first in human use studies, and protocols in which the UIC is the IND or IDE holder, any study involving vulnerable populations, protocols with tissue banking or genetic testing, high-risk studies, reporting fewer or no adverse events or unanticipated events, and protocols with frequent lapses in IRB approval. So, and then protocols that involve a significant financial interest and data management plan with the university, and protocols funded by a clinical trial agreement with an industry sponsor as well. Okay, so this is going to be somewhat similar to what Annette just covered for external monitoring, very similar. So once we select the protocol for monitoring, whether it's routine or directed, one of us will reach out to the investigator, notifying them that they've been selected, and there will be a little exchange back and forth, gathering some more information about the study and the status of the study to move forward with scheduling. And we will go over the monitoring program and what type of review it is. And after the initial contact has been made, we will do a meeting request for the study team. We'll need to speak with the investigator and any other study team members that are involved. And if there is a conflict with the proposed visit or schedule, we can move that as needed to accommodate any kind of scheduling conflicts. And yeah, typically also the investigator can elect to have key personnel from the research team present. Usually that would mean, you know, if there's a coordinator who does most of the daily activities for the study. Sorry, I think that there's a question. Let me see. Okay, so I see a question from Darlene. Are all studies meeting any of those categories audited? If so, at what frequency? So Erin, I'm not sure how often you run.
So it's not, so every study that falls into those categories gets essentially dumped into a pool, and then studies are randomly selected based on it gets broken down. We randomly select by department that is submitted to the OPRS. Then it's broken down by the PI that fall and submit their studies by that department. And then that PI their studies are then randomly selected. So the pool is anything essentially that meets those points that were on that slide, but then it gets broken down by department and PI.
So would each PI have at least one study audited if they had anything in that meets that category?
Correct. If it, yes, that would be.
So every PI in the Cancer Center will have at least one study audited.
Correct. If and when they get selected. So when, you know, a PI gets pulled, then I literally go through their studies, and if it meet, you know, if they're enrolling, if they maybe the points that not Darlene, Danielle had posted is that if they're enrolling, And if they've stopped enrolling, but they still have patients under treatment, if that study hasn't met those, then if they've closed the study or should close it, or if there's, only at the data analysis, that study no longer gets put into the pool. We move forward and help the PI to finish it and close it if applicable. If the study, let's say, opened and they haven't enrolled, it just gets wiped and then gets like recirculated into the pool.
It gets thrown back in the water. So
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
Got it.
and that's what our initial contact with the investigators includes. We ask them, for more accurate updates on if there has been any enrollment or what the status of the study is, so that we know how to proceed from there, and then it would get recirculated if they haven't enrolled anyone yet.
Got it. And there was another question, does this only apply, that they thought this applied to everything? Yes, it applies to everything. I'm asking because I'm the
Right.
administrative director of the Cancer Center Clinical Trials Office, and pretty much all our studies meet those criteria.
Right, correct.
So I was just asking from my perspective, but yes, this applies to everything.
Yes, thanks, Erin. All right. And yes, that's really similar to what my previous institution did as well. We did a random selection and then kind of went through that follow-up process. So, all right, let's see. Trying to see where I left off here. So yes, so prior to the monitoring visit, like I mentioned earlier, an email detailing the information that is needed will be sent to the research team. This will include a list of study IDs. We do a random selection of study IDs, typically around 10 subjects, or if there's more, we'll pull from more. And we do a random selection of those study IDs. And we try to make sure that it's, distributed, especially if there are different arms to the study, so that we're getting kind of an equal pool of everything. And we will ask that those be provided 1 week prior to the visit date, so that we can then let the study team know which records to present to us when we arrive for the visit. And we have our own access to the UIC research system and EPIC. And then also, if the study does use anything like REDCap, Qualtrics, or Box, we would require that we receive read-only access to those systems prior to the visit date, and then that can, be revoked at a later time after the visit is complete. All right, and so for regulatory record review, also similar to what Annette went over earlier, we will review all regulatory records, and we will check that against all of the approved records that are located within UIC research, or any historical records that may be in the OPRS Live system prior to being transported over to UIC research portal. And depending on the study, the list of items that would be reviewed is not limited to the following. So any current IRB approved protocols, grants, or any previous versions of those, current informed consent approved by IRB. We typically like to see anything that's, the stamped current approved version, and to make sure that it's also matching up the version number that the subjects are being consented with at the time of their enrollment. Initial and all continuing review IRB submissions, corresponding requests for revisions and additional information, and approval letters. All regulatory documents from the IRB, including the IBs, the 1572s, any amendments, and consents, study personnel information, and other corresponding approvals, recruitment materials, and process documentation of all unanticipated problems, and IRB notifications, and any documentation of study violations and protocol deviations, and the IRB notifications for those, and any reported conflicts of interest. So for a study participant record review, as I mentioned, we will select those prior to the visit and make the study team aware of which study records need to be reviewed, and so that you're not bringing all of the binders unless there's a special circumstance where we would ask to review everything. The records review may include the following. So as I mentioned, informed consent documents, also any parental permission, or consent documents, assents, and HIPAA authorizations, documentation of the consent process and reconsent when applicable, and inclusion and exclusion criteria documentation, source documentation, and data collection forms, such as the electronic medical record and the participant's medical record, if applicable to the study. And the term source documents refers to the document or location where the subject data is first recorded. Source documents should reflect the subject's participation in the study, including their eligibility and the course of events once the subject was enrolled in the study. And a person monitoring the study should be able to reconstruct the participant's course throughout the study by piecing together all of the information that was obtained from the original source. Okay, so the difference with this, it is very similar to a site monitor from an external source, but we will focus primarily on adherence to the IRB approved study protocol within UIC, any data security plan adherence that has gone through our IRB, DSMP adherence, research collaborations with non-UIC partners, clinical research participant and site billing related to UIC, study registration and data submission to clinicaltrials.gov. And I would also mention that Erin and I are both the clinicaltrials.gov PRS administrators for UIC as well. So any questions about that would come through us as well. The monitor will have discretion to skip procedures or questions identified on the monitoring form if they're inappropriate for the research design or reasons for conducting the monitoring activities. And then in some situations, observation of the consent process with subjects or the research procedures may be required. Okay, so for visit results, you will receive the primary findings with, we usually do an overview with the PI and any study staff that has been present throughout the visit. And we'll go over preliminary findings at the end of the visit, or if we find anything major that needs to be addressed right away, we'd like to discuss that. And then later we'll send a draft report with a summary of deficiencies to the PI and those study staff members that are present during the visit within a week of the review. And they will then have a chance to review and comment on the report before it's finalized. And so in the report, there are sections where the PI can respond and, give any kind of explanations or corrective action plans. And it sort of just depends on the major versus minor deficiencies that we find within the visit. And so, yes, that's the end of the presentation. This is the contact information for Erin and myself. And if there are any other questions, there may be a couple more slides, but I think that it's just the oversight committee and yes. So these are the other contacts for the Research Compliance Oversight Committee. And yeah, that is all. There is one thing that I did not mention in the slides, and that is if there are any, there is a process of getting the report out. If it is major, any just minor deficiencies, there's going to be, plenty of time to respond and get that back to us. But if we notice anything major right away that needs to be reported to the IRB, we will reach out to the PI and the study staff and tell them that they need to submit a new information report. And that's something that I did not put into my slides. So Erin, if there's anything else that I may have left off, just let me know.
No, it's fine. It's good. I think Natalie Isho had a question about the length of the monitoring visit, and that really depends on, it's okay, on how many subjects charts we would be reviewing, and if we needed to do those completely on site, or we are given or we can do a bulk of it online. So if the, the patient's in Epic, the consent's uploaded, there's documentation, we do all of that before the visit. We do the UIC research system before the visit. So in most instances, I would say it takes between an hour and a half to, I think the longest I've ever stayed was 3 hours. And that was because it was all a paper documentation. There was nothing except in UIC research. So everything else was hard copied, and there were, a significant number of subject records to review.
Yeah. I think my last one that I did, the study's been going since 2010 and it was all paper records. So it was, yeah, it just sort of depends.
Thank you.
Thanks.
I don't see any other questions, so good.
Anything from anyone else? Sudeshna, you want to take it from here?
Yeah, if no one else has questions, then I would like to thanks to our speakers and to everyone attending today. And the next best practice hour will be Tuesday, February 20, 2024 from noon to 1. And please keep an eye out for emails regarding future sessions.
Gotcha.
Thank you, everyone.
Great, thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks,